However you are and whenever you are, welcome back to Coffee and UFOs, two of my favorite things. Cheers to you all. I hope you're caffeinated or enjoying whatever brew you prefer at this hour. I am very excited to bring a returning guest back, documentary filmmaker Darcy Weir, and we're going to be talking about his docuseries Pascagoula 73. For those of you who are not familiar with this story, this is one of the most colorful alien abduction, close encounter stories out there to date. And what's really interesting is that there was a long gap between the two original witnesses and coming out and speaking about the event. And when Calvin finally did come back out again, not too many years later, there were two more witnesses that came out, and they had a close encounter experience as well, perhaps with the same alleged UFO craft. So this is a really exciting docuseries that Darcy directed covering the topic. And I encourage everyone, honest to goodness, to go out and check out his Pascagoula 73 docuseries on Amazon. It's 100% worth it, period. I would give it a 10 out of 10. I'm not kidding, because of all the documentaries that are out there that cover this subject, we get so little sometimes. We get bites, hour and 15, 2-hour documentaries. His is a 4-part series episodes, and the storytelling and the weaving together and the new information is extraordinary. So we'll bring on Darcy in just a moment. As a friendly reminder, thank you all for subscribing, following on whatever platform you listen to your podcast. Thank you for the reviews and the comments. All that really helps. So I appreciate anyone else who will jump on board and keep us moving up. And I want to thank the UnX Network for rebroadcasting Coffee and UFOs, 11 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday nights and 2 a.m. Eastern time Fridays. All right, so let's just jump into this, because I'm really excited. I don't want to waste any more time. Darcy, welcome back. Hey, you got a brew. What is
bubble tea and UFOs?
Oh, that's serious bubble tea.
Oh yeah, it's got some caffeine,
and that's a commitment too.
I love it, man. I love chewing what I drink.
Well, yeah, it's kind of how I like my sweets. I like sweets like, cookies and pastries that I can chew and enjoy rather than candies. But your documentary is like, it was like candy for me, man. I really, really enjoyed it. So let's cut right to the chase. Can you give us a brief summary of the documentary and the story you're telling?
Yeah. So 1973, October 11th, two men were fishing on the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. Calvin Parker was a young man, only 19. And then you've got Charlie Hickson, who's 42. They saw a light in the distance, didn't think too much of it. All of a sudden, this like blue shining light was quite bright right up behind them. They turned around. They saw this thing kind of had like a hatch door open or something, and 3 beings emanated from it and basically took them on board the craft. And this documentary series tells their story, and it tells another 2 people's stories that say they were also abducted that night, Maria and Jerry Blair. But the way we broke it down is the first episode is Charlie Hickson, because he really was the guy that told the story first and really broke it to the public. And then the next episode 2, is Calvin Parker's story. Episode 3 is Maria and Jerry Blair, who were apparently on the other side of the river that night.
And these are the 2 that came out many years, like decades later.
Yeah, they only came out, I think, probably within the past 10 years. Yeah.
And I know, it's crazy. I think it was like 2014, something like that.
Yeah.
So they had this encounter, and can you give us a little bit more detail? And you do a great job visually in the documentary series expressing what they described. Can you tell us a little bit about what the craft looked like? What kind of aliens um, they encountered, or alleged aliens?
Alleged, yeah. So let's say non-human.
Sure.
The first three beings that they were greeted by, they glided down to them and picked them up.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, yeah, they could fly, so they were like hovering the whole time. They had this like,
And they didn't have an apparent flying apparatus, right? They kind of just floated.
it was just a built-in capability, apparently. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these two guys described the beings as being robotic. From the very get-go of going public, they were like, we don't know what the heck they were, but they
Sure.
didn't
Yeah.
seem like normal living organisms. So they said they thought they were robots because their hands were not, multi digits. They were just like kind of two claw type apparatus.
Yep.
Their skin was gray, which we've heard that before,
Mm-hmm.
but it was wrinkly like an elephant's. Apparently,
Right.
they had no eyes, no mouth, and just like these spikes protruding from their heads. And yeah, they were only about 5 foot tall, apparently, and were very strong because they were carried these two men aboard the craft.
Mm-hmm.
And once they were aboard the craft, their experiences kind of changed. Like they were different. Calvin's experience was going down a like corridor to the left with one being, I guess, and then the other two took Charlie Hickson into a doorway to the right, and he was kind of like suspended in the air, and this eye-like orb protruded through the wall and started examining his body, apparently. That was his experience. Calvin's was, very in depth. And he had multiple abductions that he remembered. So we kind of go over.
Yeah, and did he remember those abductions after, or was he aware of them before the event?
Well, no, the first abduction happened. Apparently, when he was a kid, he and his brother would have somebody come into their room at night.
Right.
This is, you can read about this in Philip Mantle's books. And Philip discusses that in the docuseries. But I think the long-standing thing that this guy experienced was a lady, some kind of like female entity that he apparently kind of recognized her after the fact, because even when he was a kid, this was the same sort of entity that might have been in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And then he had like a waking memory of, he had two experiences as a, abductee. So there was the one with Charlie Hickson, and then afterwards he was fishing on his own, and he said he got taken again. So, yeah, here's the trailer.
All right. So most abduction cases tend to have recurrence, correct? Did they garner any sense of mission? Was there an agenda? Because he did do hypnosis, and you cover this really well in the docu-series. And in fact, before you answer that, was it your idea or Philip Mantle's idea to show that much of the hypnotic regression?
Philip Mantle's idea was to make the documentary literally just Calvin Parker lying on the couch being spoken to in the hypnosis session. And I thought that was going to be extremely boring and probably could have just been a YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
So I spiced it up. I just kind of gave it, I gave it color because I gave it reenactment animations and, a lot of cutaway information to visualize what he's discussing or saying happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
But, he's got this collection of hypnosis recordings that are like tapes, videos, the videos he recorded, by the way. So Maria,
what we're seeing on screen in the documentaries of the hypnosis, that's Philip recording it.
No.
Nope.
Philip allegedly hired a crew that was in Mississippi, and
so he never traveled there.
He never traveled there.
Gotcha.
I mean, even if Joe Rogan invited him on the show, he's not going. Mm-hmm. He's too elderly and he doesn't want to do that type of travel right now, apparently.
Gotcha.
But he, remotely through Irina Scott, who's pretty close to this Dr. Irina Scott. She's worked with multiple abduction cases, and this is one she's really close to. They sort of figured out how to shoot this,
mm-hmm.
hired a local crew, and then I got the raw footage, color corrected it, fixed the audio. There was 2 shots, so I kind of and they were in 1080p. I up-res them to 4K, and then just started putting in animation and all the other stuff to sort of enhance the experience, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we didn't have a video interview of Charlie Hickson. So I took an old audio recording that we had, and this is something Philip has. He has multiple hypnosis sessions. I think one with Bud Hopkins, mm-hmm. but that's on tape. And he had multiple interviews and all this stuff. So I worked with audio and then did all that. Basically the whole first episode is animation plus Philip Mantle's testimony.
I understand your hesitation as a filmmaker to think, do we just play essentially, the hypnosis session uninterrupted, which it was for the most part. There's some intercuts here and there, but as I'm watching it, I'm going, wow, that's brave. that they're doing this, and you really pulled it off. And the visuals obviously were a huge help, but when you're listening to these hypnotic regression memories and you're seeing the emotion that's bubbling up, it keeps you engaged. And thank you for including so much of that, because like I said earlier, an hour and 45-minute documentary, you're not going to get all that in there. But in a 4-part series, you do. And honest to goodness, I think what you're doing with the 4-part series here and your previous series, I think is the future for documentary filmmaking for these subjects. And I really hope it catches on. I think you've done the right thing.
Oh, I'm sure somebody will copy it. I've had other people do that. a lot of other, let's say, auteurs in the mm-hmm. UFO space have watched my films and then basically kind of recreated parts of that.
Sure. But I think that's a compliment, right? I mean, just like any kind of art form, it's the first person who does it, everyone follows suit, because you found a better way to do it.
Yeah, true enough. But I wanted to stay true to Philip's request to kind of just let the hypnosis session play out, right? So Calvin's is a massive hypnosis episode. Maria Blair's is a massive hypnosis episode. And then the fourth episode is just, who's this guy, Philip Mantle? And it's kind of like a biography on how he became a ufologist, first cases he covered, how he covered hoaxes, and then he ended up getting into the abduction phenomenon and interviewed multiple people over on his side of the pond in the UK and other parts of Europe, and eventually found his way to Calvin Parker and Charlie Hickson.
Right. I'm just going to jump back for a little bit here. What about this case fascinates you the most?
Well, I never thought that. I thought it was going to be like, okay, there's a couple things that fascinate me. First, this was one of the first abduction cases that I heard about where I just was kind of perplexed or curious. I thought, wow, like, did that really happen? Were these guys just like fishing and these weird, like lobster beings came down and took them on board a craft or something? And I, just put a feather in it in the back of my mind. Never thought I'd end up working on the story. So I think that's kind of like fascinating that, if you're telling stories in this space for long enough, I guess eventually you're going to come across and get really into the weeds on some of these things that you originally were really interested in, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that kind of fascinated me, that it ended up in my life. And the other thing is the fact that just there's so much evidence and there's so many sort of corroborating stories that prove something happened. Something had to have happened that night and the nights before and the nights after.
Okay, and we'll talk about some of those details too. A real quick question from anonymous message. Has a government rep touched base with the guests concerning the episodes? Have you had any contact from government
rep?
Yeah, anyone who's worked for the government.
Like, is Luna Paulina calling me up type thing?
I guess. It seems like it's a pretty open question.
No.
No
one
in black, no FBI is knocking on your door.
Not yet.
That's right. Just wait, Darcy. Just wait. It's coming. All right. So let's go further into the details of this. So after they had their encounter, because we have to move on to the other two. So Calvin and Charles have their encounter.
Yeah.
They drive back to town. When did they start realizing things were amiss?
Well, they realized things were amiss the moment they touched down on the sandbar of the river. They were not missing time. That's one of the things that's different about this abduction case. Betty and Barney Hill, or some of these other abduction cases that David Jacobs or Bud Hopkins cover, people think something is wrong, and then they kind of like get some memory back, and then they go and get regressed and all that stuff and pull out the details of what they were missing, right? These guys were fully awake and aware the whole experience from the moment they got picked up to the moment they dropped off. So they were in a state of shock.
So they didn't question, did we just hallucinate or the like? They felt they had a real experience immediately.
I think the only way they would question that is if they took like a massive hit of acid right before they started fishing.
Which they didn't.
Which they claim they've never done, right? And, we even have the secret tape recording in there. I cleaned up the audio as much as I could and subtitled it. And one of the first questions that the police officer asks Calvin and Charlie when they're inside this interrogation room is, have you guys been drinking tonight? No. Have you done any, do you smoke marijuana? Have you done any drugs? No, sir. We haven't done anything like that. So they were just in a state of panic when they were picked up. So, I mean, the how that went down is that they were dropped off.
Hmm.
Calvin was fully in a state of shock because he was 19. He really hadn't had a long life of experience thus far as a man. So I think he was having a hard time dealing with the trauma. Uh, Charlie had, we talk about this in the doc, he had been in the Korean War.
Hmm.
So he had been in situations where he thought he was going to die and got out of it.
Hmm.
So Charlie was really kind of collecting them. He got them to Calvin's car. They drove into town. They went to like the local news agency, like the press office, and they were knocking apparently on the door because they wanted to know what time it was because neither of them had a watch.
Hmm.
Um, so they weren't quite sure how long they were gone. And the ladies there were like basically the cleaning ladies. They said they couldn't come in and they were closed and, you know, leave them alone or whatever. Then they go to a payphone and they call first the Air Force, Keesler Air Force Base.
Hmm.
Keesler starts listening. The lady who picks up the phone is like listening to their testimony. Charlie was basically unpacking. We just got abducted. There's like, you know, some kind of alien force here. Apparently, his concern early on that was that there was going to be a full blown invasion or something like that. So that's why he figured talk to Keesler Air Force Base because we got to inform, you know, the big guns or something.
Okay. Yep.
And then the lady just, you know, bluntly shut him down and said, look, we're not interested in UFO cases. And we closed the book on that during Project Blue Book. So that wasn't too helpful to him. One of the other reasons or motives for calling the Air Force Base, apparently through Charlie's own mouth, is that he was also concerned that they might have suffered radiation poisoning or, you know, been bombarded by radiation. And
Why would they think that?
well, um, I guess when you're in a state of shock, your body feels off anyways.
Hmm.
And if you had seen a UFO up close and you'd like been taken aboard it and it was shining with this like brilliant bright blue light and orange and all this stuff,
Hmm.
you're probably thinking, is this stuff radiating? You know, is there
Yeah.
something about this energy that I'm seeing that's dangerous to my body? So I think that's why. But he figured, I think he also figured that there was stories of other abductees in the past that a radiation signature was recorded. So in the case of Betty and Barney Hill, their car
Hmm.
um, exhibited radiation, and that, you
Right.
know, has been pretty well reported. So that didn't go well. So then he picked up the phone again at this payphone and he called the sheriff. Sheriff Fred Diamond sent somebody around to pick them up. Then when they were in the station, you know, they got fully interrogated. The secret tape was recorded.
Hmm.
And the next day, it was all over the media.
So before they even got to do any more real investigation, the media was already on top of this. It's interesting that when he went to the news station, uh, that the people there just assumed that he was drinking. They just thought that they were drunk and what have you. But then they go to the police station, and you mentioned the famous recording. And the famous recording is that after they had conversations with them, they put them in a room together. The police officers left Calvin and Charles in a room by themselves, but secretly hid a tape recorder. And they didn't obviously know that they were being tape recorded, and they had a conversation, like two sincere people sharing the event in no different terms than how they had explained it to the police. And that audio is featured in the documentary. And you can tell that these are sincere people. They're not play acting. First of all, they wouldn't have even known to play act for a secret recording device. So I think that's one of the best pieces of evidence, and it's really sort of enthralling to listen to. For the sake of time, I want to discuss a little bit about the Marie and I forget her husband's name.
Jerry Blair.
Jerry Blair. So many decades later, they come out, or Marie comes out first and says, we were there. We were on another shore, and we were also, or I was also abducted. So can you tell us about their story?
Okay. So that's not completely accurate. According to, the documentary and her testimony, I don't think I'm getting this wrong, but for many years, she felt like something was wrong. Like whenever she heard that story, she felt a bit off. She felt like something, she kind of had flashes in her mind of a craft hovering around the other side of the river that night, because she does remember going to drop Jerry, her husband, off at this dock, which is adjacent to the other side where Calvin and Charlie are at. It was around 6:00, I guess, when they arrived, and they had a bit of a wait because Jerry was set to go on a boat ride, basically to be on a boat for a few days. He was hired by a captain, I think, to do some fishing work or something like that. So they were young, newlyweds, and she was going to say bye to her husband and hang out with them until he was picked up. And essentially, she had missing time. So she didn't really remember what happened that night until Jerry was not doing well with his health. He had some health complications. And we show this like cell phone recording that Maria recorded while he was in the hospital, because she wasn't sure if he was going to last that much longer. But while he was, not doing well in the hospital, he made a confession that they were abducted that night, and that for many, many years, he was kind of keeping this a secret from her because he didn't want her to live in a state of panic. He didn't want people to judge them. There was a stigma if you are an abductee. And he just wanted to be private about their situation.
Sure. It's understandable. Totally understandable.
And that's when she, kind of had her aha moment. And she reached out to, I believe it was Philip Mantle, and then Philip Mantle connected Calvin Parker to Maria Blair.
But later, her husband did, I think, not suddenly remember, right? But because he did have this memory, but he had eventually revealed to her. So that gave her some vindication, that she was not imagining something, that she did have this real experience. It validated it for her. What is there a thread between their two experiences? Is there something similar there? A parallel between Calvin and Charlie, and Marie and God, what's his name again?
Jerry.
Thank you. Marie and Jerry.
So we don't know a lot about Jerry's experience, but
Mhm.
Maria's testimony is that he had multiple abductions over years, but he was keeping this all from her and family and friends for those fears of ridicule or stigma, whatever. Um, and then Maria, she she really kind of had a mental block apparently on all of this. And we, the hypnosis video was
Mhm.
recorded by the same crew that apparently Philip and Irina Scott coordinated to film. And this is what led to Maria talking more about the phenomenon and how it surrounds her. I will say there's a local journalist that lives in the Mississippi area named Chelsea Norton Prince,
Mhm.
and she started covering this story. And she, on behalf of Philip again, remotely abroad, agreed to go meet up with Maria and interview her. And that interview footage is it was filmed
An iPhone.
on her iPhone.
I could tell.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. And it's,
But
it's
that's okay.
not the
That's
greatest, but it still
yeah.
tells a story,
It
right?
does. It was helpful. Very helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So we kind of like broke up the hypnosis session and then filled in a bunch more details about what Maria really felt about the history of that phenomenon with her family, as
Mhm.
well as, what happened to her apparently through that extra little video that Chelsea provided,
Yeah.
you know. And so I kind of like blew it up, tried to enhance it a bit, some color
Mhm.
correction, all that stuff, get the audio dialed up because, it's recording off this little phone from a
Mhm.
distance.
Sure.
But it worked.
Yeah, it did. And look, it's better than, a written text or just audio alone. So having that visual aid was helpful because you get to see the actual witness. I guess what I'm curious about is you have on the same night apparently these different abductions occurring. Um, it's not like they're all mingling in the same place, and they can say, "Oh yeah, I remember we were together." But they had these weird experiences. There was like these robotic like entities you discussed. There was this kind of female-oid-ish entity of some sort. Um, if this is happening at the same time, if these two separate couples of people are being abducted, the probability of them being abducted by different alien species or what have you seems pretty unlikely, pretty low. So I'm just imagining that there must have been some purpose behind this. And since you spent so much time on it, like, could you garner any sense of, a hunch of what was going on?
It seemed like some kind of research, it seemed like some kind of scientific um, expedition of some sort, right? And,
Hmm.
you know, it's not just those people that witnessed something happening that night. When we go into the fourth episode, we really unpack many, many witnesses, like multiple police officers that saw the craft in the sky that night,
Hmm.
or Sheriff Red Diamond 2 nights before seeing a UFO in the sky. So I think Sheriff Red Diamond, when he brought them in, he already knew something was going on in the skies, right? The Coast Guard, we show the documentation from the Coast Guard report.
Hmm.
They chased a blue object that was emanating out of the river
Right.
that, connects up to the ocean. But this distressed the Coast Guard enough that they chased this thing and were like trying to figure out what it was. So there was a
Yeah.
USO
Just
encounter.
track it and sure. Hmm.
Yeah. Different night, but all happening around the same time in the same
Hmm.
area as this anomalous like UFO, USO stuff, right? Um, there's a priest and a woman that were driving in a car, and they saw this object fly over the road over top of their car that was very similar to what everybody else was seeing. Larry Booth saw something, who was a citizen that came forward. J. Allen Hynek, the former Blue Book man, and James Harder. This is another university professor. They went down to Mississippi that Friday, the same week that this happened. And they interviewed these men straight away because they were already doing work building, QFOS, Center for UFO Studies, and trying to bring as much data together to see if this phenomenon really was happening and anomalous and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And Hynek went public and said immediately after they did their interviews with them, they did a physical examination, They did, they, not only them, who were two different doctors, but they also had another medical doctor examine them who was local. He said that medical doctor said he believed what the men went through because of the way that they carried themselves, spoke about it. And they actually had physical, puncture wounds where they said something seemed to be injected into them when they first encountered these beings, and they felt sedated, right? They felt relaxed. So it seems like something happened that night. You know what I mean? It seemed like there was some kind of UFO flap around that time going on, not only across the United States, because we do kind of show a little bit of that. There was a lot of humanoid encounters. There was this book that was published at that time in 1970, I think it was 1975 or something, that was tabulated all the different strange humanoid encounters that people had across the United States in 1973. So,
and these beings were not in that, right? These were novel, what they experienced.
Yeah, they were. They were very different. And I mean, I think one of the things that I like about Michael P. Masters is that he says that, maybe what we're dealing with this phenomenon scientifically could be proven as a version of us that has come back on the same timeline. Right. You don't have to travel to another star or, go to another galaxy or something like that. You just have to figure out how to use time travel and go back on this same planet. Maybe that's easier to do. And, these UFOs are time machines, right? And these robots are robots. And the humanoid on board was a human, but human 3.0, 2.0, who knows, right? And has AI carrying out the menial task of taking your subjects on board, and then you do the examination with them. You know what I mean? So
that there is that gray skin parallel that you had mentioned earlier, but still the shape of these robots were so bizarre. And Michael B. Masters, maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but the hypothesis of his is kind of based on the gray aliens, right? And how they've evolved if we were a spacefaring culture, or just how we would look hundreds of thousands of years from now. Whereas these robot type entities seem like something completely different, right? Those would be some kind of, like you said, an AI or of the sort. Why wouldn't we see those in other alien abduction cases? Why only in this one? That's a strange thing. Maybe they were being test run. They didn't work out very well. The subjects did not respond well to these AI. Let's try something else. Most I shouldn't say most. Many abduction cases, especially from like the 80s, 90s, and 70s, um, involved some aspect of interest in our DNA, our reproduction. Was there anything in this case that was indicative of their interest in hybridization or using reproductive, faculties and DNA for any purpose?
Yeah, so Calvin recalled blood being removed. I don't think he said he thought that the female looking alien was kind of hot and he would have shagged her if he had a couple beers in him.
Hey, it's better to be honest, I guess.
Yeah, why not? And then Maria, she said that, in her hypnosis, she felt like they were taking reproductive material like eggs and blood.
Uh,
So that is indicative of like what other abductees have
right.
said in the past, right?
So these two events happen at the same time. His blood's taken. She feels that maybe something from her, you know, she doesn't know what they took, right? She's only guessing.
She states that they're taking her eggs. That's what she says.
Okay. All right. So then maybe there is something there, actually. Maybe that's your correlation.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. I don't know.
Are you going to do a 2.0? Follow up on the
Uh,
documentary?
I don't know. I don't think so.
What is your next
There's
project going to be anyway? What should we look forward to?
um doing another Dark Alliance
Oh, excellent.
expose.
Excellent. Okay.
Um and what else? Trying to do a Canadian thing, but I gotta find some work at this point. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, doing working on some stories. I'll maybe leave some people in suspense.
Okay, good. We'll leave it there. Um, so, okay. Now, years later, we have this hypnotic regression. The woman who performed this, can you tell me about her qualification and why she was chosen to be the hypnotist for these for Maria and for Calvin?
Yeah, so Chanel is the African American woman that was featured in both those hypnosis sessions. Um, if you speak to Philip, he quite funnily will recall that he planned it so she knew nothing about these people before she did the hypnosis sessions. She kind of helped. He provided, I think, some questions for her to ask to sort of like guide the interview once the hypnosis was underway.
Mm-hmm.
But you kind of see, she did Calvin first, and then she did Maria second. And if you watch in the session she did with Calvin, she's kind of like, what? Like she has this look on her face as they get deeper and deeper into the session. Because she didn't know what territory she was going into. And I think Philip he wanted it that way to make it more authentic. And also, just he thought it'd be kind of funny. I'm editing this too, and there's a point where he says he gets into like a physical altercation with the female being.
Mm-hmm.
And his line is like, I was fed up. I want to kill this bitch.
I remember that.
And I was thinking of maybe making it funny for a second and just showing the look on Chanel's face for about 5 to 10 seconds.
Just hold it. Yeah.
And holding it, because she was like she really was, taken back by that line.
You don't want to take away too much from the the story, so I get that.
Yeah.
But it was more than entertaining enough. Just because you're just flabbergasted, like this is, and it's, the way Calvin expresses himself. He has his own like particular colloquialisms, that are
Hmm.
like unique to him, and the way he expresses himself.
Hmm.
And I really appreciate that. And that's the great thing about the hypnotic sessions is you get that raw. And of course, he does talk about it in interviews as well. Uh, was there anything revealed during those hypnotic sessions that was surprising or new?
Well, yeah, like I had no idea there was a female being on board the
I
craft.
didn't either. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that Charlie thought she was hot, then that switched in a later abduction to him wanting to assault her. Um, all that stuff was like, I was just like, what the heck is going on here? This is new territory for me. But it was, uh, all new, everything other than knowing about there being some involvement at one point with J. Allen Hynek
Mm-hmm.
and the basic story that these two men said they were taken aboard a craft. I had no idea that, there were at least a dozen other witnesses, that the Coast Guard, the Navy, multiple policemen got involved and witnessed these UFOs. I had no idea that there was other abductees. I had no idea that there was a woman on board the craft.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say a woman-ish being.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know a lot about Philip Mantle either. I had no idea that, he probably started out right around the same time that I started out looking at the UFO phenomenon and all these people talking about what's going on around the world back in my early 20s, really. And he was, I believe, early 20s as well, like maybe 2021, when he was like starting to go to these conferences in the UK and setting up UFO hotlines for reports and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Speaking,
they had their own like move. It wasn't called MUFON; it was something else. But they had their own.
it's called Bufon.
Well, now it's MUFON, but didn't he have like a more local group at one point?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But he had his Bufon card. We showed
yeah,
that in the documentary. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, Philip is a great narrator too. He's not purposely narrating because you're just recording him and asking him questions. But
Yeah.
the way you intercut he's a great narrator. He's very expressive. He's verbose in the best way possible.
He's eloquent
Mhm.
and you know, just an average Joe at the same time.
Yeah, it's
He
great.
has his own colloquialisms, that he throws into the stories and
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I remember when I was going over the photos and old videos in the archive, we showed like photos of the exact area of the river where they got picked up and
Mhm.
stuff. And he was calling it a rubbish tip, like this area of the river that's quite the rubbish tip. Or he called it a shit tip. And I'm like, what? Like,
What is
oh,
that?
he's just basically calling the dock where they were like a
Uh-huh.
garbage dump, because it was like,
We'll just
it was
dump stuff off there.
it wasn't a glamorous place to go hang out and have a beer and fish. It was
Mhm.
like a dump site that they were hanging out at that night. And it's all cleaned up now, and they actually have like a placard that
Yeah.
was installed
Mhm.
to commemorate the abduction and stuff like that. Like the city has put that in there
That's a
because
thing.
it's
Eventually, cities, towns come to
yeah,
embrace these events. Yeah.
Westall 66 in Australia.
Sure.
where else? I mean,
Well, I mean, just look at Roswell.
Roswell,
Um,
yep.
in the Berkshires now, they're embracing it as well.
Yep. You're right. They got
Yep.
that big craft object in the middle of the forest there, the
Hmm.
statue.
Yep. So how did you get in touch with Philip? How did you guys
Oh, I
come
was
to?
thinking when you said Berkshires, I was actually thinking of the UK. What's the Bentwaters, Rendlesham? In
Oh,
Rendlesham, they have a monument there too.
mhm.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah. When did you guys hook up, and how did that happen?
Um, well, I guess I'm getting a bit of a reputation as a independent filmmaker that's
Sure.
scrappy and gets things done. So, Philip reached out to me via email. He said, "Hey, like I've written a bunch of books about this.
Hmm.
You should maybe think about doing a documentary on the case." And he wanted to just call the documentary Pascagoula 1973 Hypnosis Tapes because obviously he had those hypnosis videos
Hmm.
and he had an extensive archive. But again, I was concerned about not covering the whole story. And so he reached out to me and then he said, I'm not traveling there, but if you felt like coming over to the UK, I said, okay. So I jumped on a flight, flew over there, took a train up to the northern part of England there from London.
Hmm.
And then he's in like the Yorkshire area. And his wife picked me up at the train station and I had all my gear and arrived at his home and set up everything. And the interview commenced. And then I had that window to talk to him about the whole case and then packed my stuff up, got back on the train, headed back down to London to meet up with my wife.
Okay.
And
You didn't fly back same
no,
same
no,
day.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no. We stuck around for a little bit because it's like, flying across from North America to there's quite a distance. So
Hmm.
yeah. And then I edited the series over a year and a bit. Like I shot the interview with him
Hmm.
in November of 2023 and the film came out in January.
Yeah. You talked about the Calvine episode as well, right? But you discussed that with Philip.
The Calvine?
Yeah, Calvine. Oh, am I saying it wrong?
Am I having a brain fart? What am I
Oh,
thinking here?
maybe I'm wrong. Hold
What
on.
am I wait, what are we talking about?
The Calvine UFO. Am I saying it Calvin? Calvine?
Calvine? Well,
Calvin
remind me.
sighting? Yeah. The diamond shaped craft um in Scotland.
No, that's James Fox. That's the
Plane.
program.
No, but did you not talk to him about that Philip class while you were there?
Nope.
Oh, okay. I just thought that would be something that would be of interest.
We talked about other cases because he had plastered all around his room like every type of UFO memorabilia you could think of. It was pretty impressive.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, he has like toys. He's got photos.
he's got
Like,
like full alien busts and
yes, yeah. It's really
stuff
interesting.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got rocks from Roswell from his tour of duty there. But um, I guess I asked him about the alien autopsy because he wrote the books about the alien autopsy
Oh,
footage.
he was the guy. Yeah,
He was the guy,
he set the
right?
record straight. Hmm.
Yeah, and he was like, it was all a hoax. So, he's got a long history with the subject and he's been involved with stories that are straight up bullshit. But that footage, that hoax footage, apparently sold for like over $1 million. So
Crazy.
there you go, right? That just shows you when people say there's no way that that alien video or that UFO video could have been
Mhm.
hoaxed. Yeah, it could be because there's money in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you also talk to him about the Rendlesham farce? Did you get in any depth with him on that?
No, we didn't talk about that. I do know about Rendlesham Forest. I've spoken to Jonathan Burrows about
Mhm.
that. Um, that's an incredible case.
Yeah, I could see you covering that case as well.
It's been covered so many times, and you know, uh, call me bitter, but this docu series came out.
Hmm.
I think like 2 months before uh, another Pascagoula documentary came out on like Amazon and all this stuff. Blaze TV in the UK
Hmm.
is releasing their Pascagoula documentary about Calvin Parker
Yeah.
in like a week. I was like, thanks, Phil, for working with me and like 10 other filmmakers at the same time.
But hopefully that'll boost like the SEO of Pascagoula in general, and
I
maybe
doubt it.
people will find it.
I
Um,
doubt it. But
but
yeah,
I do really hope that your people find your docuseries and take the time to watch all the episodes because it's absolutely worth it.
thanks, man.
Yeah, oh no, and I mean that seriously. So for everyone listening, please go to where's the best place? occultjourneys.com to find out more about you, Darcy.
Yeah. My social media is there, and you can check out the films, trailers, posters. And if you click on the poster, it'll take you right through, usually to a site that you can either watch it for free or next to nothing.
Okay, great. If you can leave us with one thought, what would it be?
The aliens are here.
You're serious.
I'm pretty sure.
You're pretty sure.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time on the subject.
Yeah.
Probability wise, do you think just aliens are here and that's the most likely? Or do you think that there is something, like you said, maybe time traveling or the like, something different?
I think, you know, there is a opportunity in science and in reality if we're basing things on science and facts
Hmm.
for a plethora of explanations for the phenomenon. So I'm open to the fact that some of the UFOs might be reverse engineered craft that are ours. Some of the UFOs are theirs. Who are they? They could be non-humans that have existed here in the oceans or something like that longer than we have. They could be extraterrestrials, as you know, they've been called for the past 7 decades.
Sure.
They could be part of this extra tempestre model that Michael Masters proposes, that they are us evolved or changed genetically and cybernetically from the future, and we've come back in our own scientific means. I'm open to all of it. We just got to get somebody off one of these craft and get them to make it known to the world in a big way, right?
Yeah. Well,
Get them on the news and get them to introduce themselves. Who knows?
yeah. Keep your cameras rolling because you just never know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Darcy, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. It's always good chatting with you, Alan.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Thanks, everybody, for jumping into chat. And, well, we'll see where Darcy goes filmmaking wise. But I hope that he continues to put out the kind of docu-series that he's putting out. And like we said earlier, maybe there's going to be some copycats, but it's just the way to go. These cases are so complex, and some of them are decades in the making with information coming out over the years. So to try to squeeze any one of these cases in an hour and a half is really tough to do. In a conversation like this, we can't even fit in a fraction of it. So thank you all. I want to also thank the UnX Network for rebroadcasting every Thursday night, 11 p.m. Pacific time, 2 a.m. Eastern time on Fridays. And if you like this podcast, please rate, subscribe, comment, share. And if you are a fan of the YouTube channel, if you can hit the notification bell, that'd be awesome. All of that adds to the organic growth, and we'll just keep moving up. All right, peace and love, everyone. And until next time, live in the mystery.
It's good to be an earthling. I wish more of us would think of ourselves that way.
I don't have a problem with skeptics. It's debunkers that are on some other level that I don't understand.
Essentially an inference of a change in local gravity.
Saucer-shaped craft, and they're hovering over the water.
Blue Book Special Report 14. The better the quality of the sighting, the more likely to be unexplainable.